Yeah, that's what you want to do to the
It's
cloud.
recording.
Oh, so we're good now. Okay, so now I'm just going to get out of this altogether here. And I think let's let you go ahead and introduce the speaker, Mark. And
yes, sir. Great. We are very honored to have Susan Gillette Meer speak to us tonight. She's a very highly sought after speaker. She's a third generation DAR member of the Jacob Ferree Chapter in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She served at the local, state, and national levels of DAR. She is the commander-in-chief of the Society of the Descendants of Washington's Army at Valley Forge. And some people may think that Valley Forge was a battle, but there was no battle at Valley Forge. It was an encampment there. This society has almost 3,000 members, and she has a wealth of information. We're very honored to have her here. I think she mentioned earlier that she's spoken maybe 42 times recently on this particular speech. So without further ado, thank you, Susan, for being here with us this evening.
Thank you, Mark. And I feel kind of sneaky because I saw your agenda. I'm getting a certificate of appreciation that I don't really need to work, do I? It's already on the agenda. It must be permanent. Anyway, okay, well, I am a school teacher, and I'm going to talk about my love of history, which used to not be there because I actually teach organic chemistry during the day. So it's a very different world. But I have to tell you that I teach via Zoom every day. Now, some of my students are in the classroom, but usually a very small percentage of them. Most of them are on Zoom. And I'm looking at some of these pictures here, like Bill and Elizabeth's iPad and Blas and David and Carrie and Bob. And I have to tell you that I'm going to be a better speaker if I can see you. So I don't know if you are like hesitant because you're like, oh, I don't have my hair done or whatever. But we want you to come on camera if you can, because when I can see you, I can read how you're receiving the presentation. I'm telling you, it's a much better presentation. Thank you. Good, good, good. So if you can come on. All right. Of course, that means you can't sleep either, but that's okay because I'm going to keep you awake. It's going to be good. Going to be good. Anyway, all right. So one quick thing, I recently read a study that said that if I'm talking to you and you're on camera, but you don't move, then I don't really feel that connection. So we're going to start it off by making sure that you guys can all see my presentation. So give me 1 second while I just started sharing my screen, and now I'm adjusting my little grid of people. All right, so my question for you is, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my presentation screen? Give me a thumbs up. All right, we're starting off on a good note together. All right, so yes, I am in charge of it's such a long name, the Society of the Descendants of Washington's Army at Valley Forge. Long name, but you know, just like you guys say SAR, we have our group, we call ourselves DVF, Descendants of Valley Forge. So if you hear me tonight say DVF, you'll know I'm talking about my group. Okay, DVF. Anyway, so you know, a lot of people really like American history, but there are a lot of Americans that don't know American history at all. They don't. And so when you say the words Valley Forge, they don't always think of the same things that you and I do who like American history. So when we hear the words Valley Forge in America, a lot of people think of the park. Okay, Valley Forge National Historical Park. Do you guys remember in 1976 when the federal government did a big push to commemorate the bicentennial and there were all these things happening? One of the things that happened was they took Valley Forge State Park and they made it into a national park. All right, so it's 5 square miles. I need a show of hands. Who's actually ever been to Valley Forge National Historical Park? Anybody? 1, 2, that's it. Okay, gorgeous, isn't it, Judge? Gorgeous, right, Tom? Beautiful park. You can at any point in time see people jogging in it or horseback riding it. It's just gorgeous. All right, now there's a couple things you're going to see if you go to the park. You're going to see these iconic huts. Now, none of these huts are original to Revolutionary War times. They are all recreations, just like the ones I have behind me. But we know how they were made, and so you see the same type of huts all over the Valley Forge property. But it's gorgeous and sprawling, and you can see for far distances. Now, in addition to these huts and the beautiful scenery, you're going to see a lot of historical buildings. And the first building that I think of, and it's iconic to Valley Forge, is the Isaac Potts House. Isaac Potts built this house in 1773. And the reason why it's so important is because this is where General George Washington stayed with some of his staff. And even Martha Washington came and stayed here. Now, most of this is original, but quite a bit of it has been restored. Now, if you go there during non-pandemic times, you can actually tour the house. There's usually a park ranger there to tell you all about it. Now, you keep going throughout the park and you're going to find monuments. And this beauty is called the National Memorial Arch, and it was dedicated 1917 to George Washington and his troops. I was just there about 2 months ago for the Wreaths Across America event. There was a private event for our DVF group, but next year we're hoping to have it big and public, and we're hoping to lay 2,000 wreaths for the soldiers that died there at Valley Forge, the 2,000 soldiers. All right, so you know what? Even people in Pennsylvania, when you say Valley Forge, they think of the park. A lot of people think of the park, but see, you and I, we have a different image of Valley Forge. So when I say Valley Forge, is this more along the lines of what you're thinking? If you're following along, and this is, can you shake your head? Yes. All right. Yeah, this is probably what you're thinking of. These cold soldiers that look like they're starving and poorly clothed, right? Is this really true? Actually, we're going to find out it is. So let's go back in time and let's talk about the encampment at Valley Forge, not the modern park today. All right, I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning of the Revolutionary War, 1775, April. The shot heard round the world. Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. This is a great place to visit too. If you ever get a chance to do New England, totally do this. All right, so we're looking at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Now, Congress is meeting and they're like, who are we going to get to be the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army? We need someone who has military experience, who knows those British guys. They choose George Washington. Now, I'm from Pittsburgh. And if you're from Pittsburgh, yeah, George Washington, he was the president of the United States. And yeah, he was the commander-in-chief. Ooh, but see, we also know that he was a major person in the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War around here in Pittsburgh, there's lots of sites, Fort Necessity and all sorts of places. George Washington, well, he had some trouble in the French and Indian War. He was a British officer. He had some major defeats, major mistakes. But that's part of why Congress chose him, because he knew the British military system and he had experience. And he ended up being the perfect guy for the job. At times they doubted it, but he really came through. Okay, now let's fast forward about a year after the Revolutionary War begins. We're talking the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. So here's my question for you guys. Let's see who's a history buff. Where's the capital of the United States in July 4th, 1776? Does anybody know? Hey, we got some people who know. Philadelphia. That's right, Philadelphia. It is a bustling, busy city, one of the largest cities in the United States at that time, or colonial America the day before, whatever you want to call it. All right, so it's really big. So now this next question is kind of rhetorical. Don't answer this, but you're going to know the answer. If you were the British Army and the United States just declared independence, what city would you want to capture the most? Okay, the same answer, Philadelphia. And that's right, about a year after the Declaration of Independence, the British took the capital of Philadelphia. Now, Congress had been meeting in Philadelphia, but when the British came in, Congress had to flee. So let's give you guys all down south a little Pennsylvania map. So here we go. This is where Philadelphia is, the blue star. Now, if the British are going to come and take over Philadelphia, the Congress has to flee. So where do they flee? They flee to a town called York, Pennsylvania. Has anybody ever heard of York, PA? Okay, maybe just because you're a history buff, but that's probably not, that's probably the only reason why you've heard of York, PA. All right, now you're thinking, where's Valley Forge in comparison to these two places? There it is, right in the middle. Is this starting to go, okay, if George Washington is going to have to rest his troops for the winter, and all of this stuff just happened where the British just took Philadelphia and Congress had to flee to York, where would be a good place to rest your 12,000 troops for the winter? Wouldn't Valley Forge be perfect? All right, so there's bunches of reasons why Valley Forge was chosen. One of the first reason is the troops were between Congress and the British. That's a perfect reason. You're going to protect your beloved Congress. The second thing is you're only 18 miles right outside of Philadelphia. So you can keep an eye on those sneaky British, right? You're actually at a good location, kind of high up, where you can see 18 miles and you can kind of keep an eye on them and make sure they're not doing what they're not supposed to do. They might even try to come into the countryside to gather supplies, but you're right there to stop them, aren't you? Now, here's another reason why Valley Forge was chosen, because it had Valley Creek, fresh water. Really important when you have 12,000 troops, right? They're going to be there for 6 months. Another reason is there were great roads in and out of Valley Forge. And you need roads if you're going to bring in supplies, don't you? But one of the major reasons why Valley Forge was chosen, it's the last on this list here, is that Valley Forge was actually very defensible. The layout of the land was great, so that it wasn't that you were stuck in a valley or there wasn't like tons of like forests around. I mean, it was really quite a defensible area. So on December 19th, 1777, George Washington and his troops marched into Valley Forge. This iconic painting by William B.T. Trago hangs in the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia. It was restored by my group in 2011. And it is interesting because there's some good points about it. And then there's others you want to, if you really know your history, you go, All right. So one thing is George Washington. We love seeing him. We see him in all the Valley Forge paintings, everything. Second thing is, I need to tell you a little secret, just so you know. We have weather reports from every day they were in Valley Forge, and there was no snow on the ground on the day they marched into Valley Forge. But it makes for a very good painting, doesn't it? All right, very good painting, okay? Now, was it cold? Well, yes, it actually was cold. Now, give me a thumbs up in your screen if you can see my cursor. Can you guys see my cursor? Good, awesome. I want you to look at these guys' legs. Do you see their legs? Bare legs, right? And look at this guy's head. He probably has a previous injury, doesn't he? Previous injury. I want to go all the way to the left-hand side. Look at this guy over here. What do you notice about his legs? They're bare. What does it look like about his feet? Does it look like he doesn't have shoes? Is that true? Did some of the soldiers not even have shoes? It is very true. And we're going to talk about the numbers of soldiers that were declared unfit for duty because they were poorly clothed or didn't even have shoes. Terrible. This time was sometimes referred to as the winter of red snow. That's kind of gruesome if you think about, why is the snow red? Well, if you have bare feet, is it going to crack in the winter? Yep. Okay. You guys are getting a little taste of winter down there. And who was your chaplain? Your chaplain did a great prayer there. Who is it? Who's your chaplain? Donald, great prayer, really great prayer. A lot of people are really struggling right now, and they've been in my prayers as well. But you guys are getting a little taste for winter, but can you imagine being barefoot out in the snow and marching? And of course, your feet are going to crack and bleed, right? Of course. All right. So these guys marched into Valley Forge. Every painting, every drawing you see of Valley Forge has like George Washington and soldiers that look poorly clothed. Okay, very, very true. Let's talk about all the people that were at Valley Forge before we talk about the conditions. So let's talk about General George Washington, Commander-in-Chief. That's his title. That's my title in my group because I'm supposed to be George Washington, the leader. All right, he was 45 years at Valley Forge, 45 years old. I think that's kind of young. I mean, well, that's young because that's younger than I am. But at the same time, I think to myself, well, is that young? Well, probably not for colonial times, right? Didn't live as long, and he had all that experience. Now, he was at Valley Forge, and he's our key player. He made a lot of decisions that really improved the Army during that 6-month encampment. And we're going to talk about all those decisions. But Martha stayed with him for a period of time as well. There were 8 major generals and 19 brigadier generals. I didn't put all the names up here. I just put a few that I thought you might know, like Nathaniel Greene, who was the quartermaster general, the guy in charge of the supplies. And he was reluctant to take the position at first. Henry Knox, you've heard of, Fort Knox and all these things. So you know a bunch of these guys, okay? These are some major people that were at, no pun intended, but major general. But these are major people that were at Valley Forge. Now, in addition to these guys, there were 11 total officers. These guys were younger. The average age of these guys was like in their 20s. And Aaron Burr, Alexander Hamilton, right? James Monroe, a future president of the United States when he was a young guy, was at Valley Forge. Charles Wilson Peale, famous artist. He actually did 40 different portraits during the 6 months at Valley Forge. All right, so maybe you're descended from one of those officers, major general. or maybe you're descended from, one of the soldiers. So if you have 12,000 troops coming in, plopping down all their stuff and setting up a big city, which is now to become one of the top 5 biggest cities in the United States at that time, just because of the transient nature of like, okay, suddenly it's big. You need a little bit of everything, don't you? Do you need carpenters? Yep. Do you need blacksmiths? Yep. Do you need engineers? Yeah, I had to look up what a sapper was. A sapper is an engineer. So that brings me to the first thing that happened when they got to Valley Forge. So they get to Valley Forge and they start to set up camp. And they start to realize, George Washington starts to really realize that health is becoming a huge issue with the Continental Army. Good health. We need good health. And so as they start to set up the camp, he gives the engineers orders to kind of evaluate how they're going to defend the area, building the redoubts and how they're going to set it up. But another thing that the engineers do is they realize that when they first get there and they start setting up camp, all the guys are going to the bathroom right near where they cook their food and eat their food. Now, we know you can't do that. We know that today, dysentery, all sorts of problems from that. Or they'd wander a little ways away uphill to go to the bathroom, where would everything would run right back downhill, right? So the engineers came in and they were like, okay, we need to change this. And there were strict orders of where they could use the restrooms. And they started digging places far enough away from the living areas that it stopped some of those health issues. All right, so that was part of the thing. We love it that those engineers were there. They had a big function. Lots of different people had all these different functions. Now, I have to preface, I'm speaking to a group of men tonight, although I see Elizabeth's iPad and I wonder if it's really Elizabeth or Elizabeth's husband that's joining in. But I'm speaking to a group of men here. And I have to say, I'm going to use the term guys and men to talk about these soldiers. But it's very possible that there were women soldiers there at Valley Forge. Have you heard of Deborah Sampson, Molly Pitcher, Anna Marie Lane? These were women soldiers at Valley Forge. But since there were so few, I'm going to stick with the male pronouns, guys, men. But please know I'm not neglecting the women. I'm a woman. I'm not going to neglect the women. In fact, I do want to briefly mention that there were 400 or more women at the encampment at Valley Forge. And George Washington didn't really like the women at Valley Forge, but he said, okay, if you have a job, you can be here. So washerwomen, and I had to laugh because when I was researching this, I was like, prostitutes? Apparently they were considered having a job and they were allowed to be there at the encampment at Valley Forge. Cooks, nurses, all sorts of women were at Valley Forge with children. There's a great book by Nancy K. Lone called Following the Drum, The Women at the Valley Forge Encampment. Anyway, lots of people there. If you're having like somewhere between 12 to 14,000 people there, where are they all going to stay? Well, all those huts were built, like the ones behind me. And what I find interesting is they built over 2,000 log huts in a matter of days. Now, it is no wonder that if you go to Valley Forge National Park today, 0 trees stand that were there during the Revolutionary War. In fact, they really only recently found 1 tree on the outskirts that had fallen down. But other than that, they really feel like 0 trees are there from Revolutionary War times. Why? They cut them all down to make their log huts, right? They had to build them. George Washington gave them some incentive and said, extra rations for the guys who build their huts the fastest. And then once they built their huts and they were in their huts, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 people to a hut, right? No, 12 to 14 men were staying in these huts. So you were bunking up with a partner, right? Now, if it's wintertime, you might be thinking, well, that's not too bad because, you get all warm and toasty and share a bed with someone. Okay, you share their warmth. But see, you're also sharing their lice and their mites and their dysentery and smallpox and some problems. We're going to talk about the health here. Before I do that, I just want to make sure you know what I mean when I say brigades, regiments. All right, a typical brigade was about 1,500 men. So maybe your ancestor that you joined SAR through was in the 3rd Pennsylvania Brigade, the 7th Pennsylvania Regiment of the 3rd Pennsylvania Brigade, or I don't know. The point is that you had brigades, which were bigger, and then individual regiments, which were a little bit smaller. And some regiments were not named after a state. You might have the German regiment, Okay, that was one as well. All right, so we've got some brigades, typically 1,500 men. Now, George Washington recognized not only that, the bathrooms need to be moved away, but health was an issue. And up until this point of the Revolutionary War, it was pretty much squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, oh, you're really sick? Okay, I'll help you. Oh, you're injured? I'll help you. But they started realizing that there was a need for some attention. So George Washington issued that they were to fix on some suitable place near their respective brigades where hospitals may be erected, one for the sick in each brigade. Give me one moment, please. Basically, he was saying, all right, I need one hospital for every 1,500 men. And we're going to start doing daily health reports. No more just wait until they get sick to treat them. I want to know how everyone's doing every day. Start reporting. And so at Valley Forge, we started really addressing the health issues of our soldiers. Now, there's lots of problems: dysentery, previous injury, malnutrition. I want to address these three problems. The first one's an annoying one called the itch. Now, I found this document from June 77, and this document actually gives a recipe for curing the itch. Now, what's the itch? Little mites are going to live on your body in your crevices. Okay, all sorts of private areas. And they're going to live there because you're kind of dirty. Okay, well, the itch was very annoying, and soldiers would scratch until it was raw and red and inflamed. And this ointment, it doesn't sound so bad at first. You're like, bark of bayberry root, root of hibiscus. But then you start realizing that there was tobacco juice and oil and brimstone, which is sulfur. Do you know what sulfur smells like? It smells like rotten eggs. Can you imagine having an itchy rash in your privates and all that, where you have to spread this nasty ointment on it? Well, welcome to colonial Continental Army life, right? Okay, now that was an annoying health problem. But then there was the deadly smallpox. Now, this was not new to Valley Forge, but something happened in 1777. George Washington recognized that smallpox could kill off his army quickly, and he made a bold move and said, every soldier is going to be inoculated for smallpox. Now, he made this issue before Valley Forge, but it wasn't until Valley Forge where they were kind of settled down and starting to get organized that they could go through in their surgeons could go through and go, Tom, are you vaccinated? Tom, Mark, Al, Peter, Donald, and like literally go through every soldier and legitimately make sure they were all did I say vaccinated? I didn't mean to say vaccinated. Vaccinated is on my mind. Inoculated. Did I say vaccinated? I think I might have said vaccinated. Okay, no, inoculated. Okay. Do you know that inoculation is different than vaccination? Okay, both my parents are doctors, so for me, it doesn't make me squeamish. If you're squeamish, go la, 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 cover your ears. So inoculation, vaccination is, I'm going to get a shot. Ow, that's it. Inoculation means I'm going to go to someone who's close to death with smallpox. They have boils all over their bodies, and I'm going to take one of those boils on that person that's dying of smallpox and cut it open and scrape out some of the pus. And then I'm going to come over to you, my soldier, and I'm going to cut a slit in your arm, and I'm going to scrape the pus inside your arm. That's inoculation. Why would they do that? Well, if you were exposed to smallpox in colonial times, 30% chance you would die. But if you were inoculated, you'd probably get a mild version of it, but it was only a 2% chance you would die. Is that going to save your army if you declare that the whole army should be inoculated? Give me a nod of your head if you're still awake. Still awake. Okay, good. Peter, are you awake there? Peter, okay, he's awake. Okay, thumbs up, I'll take it. All right, inoculation, it saved the army. Now, he made this decree before Valley Forge, but again, Valley Forge was time to get it done. In fact, when Martha Washington was going to come visit him at Valley Forge, he told her she had to be inoculated before she came. Okay, everybody, no exceptions. All right, so another health issue was clothing. So you see these pictures of these soldiers that look poorly clothed. For wintertime, that's terrible. Well, is this really true? Well, yeah. 4 days after they arrived at Valley Forge, George Washington was able to gather some data, and he wrote a letter to Henry Lawrence. And it read, "We have by a field return this day made no less than 2,898 men now in camp unfit for duty because they are barefoot and otherwise naked." Come on, guys, do the math with me. 12,000 soldiers, 3,000 are unfit for duty. That's 1 in every 4 soldiers are poorly clothed. And I have to tell you, it got worse before it got better. By February 1st, the number rose to 3,989, another 1,000. Wow, way too many. So that brings me to another point here. Besides the engineering, besides the health, George Washington realized they better get their acting gear and get some better supplies for these guys. So Nathaniel Greene stepped in as quartermaster general, and they started writing letters to all sorts of different people saying, we need supplies. I mean, not only having cattle driven in, but also lots of clothing and whatever they needed for their soldiers. And they were able to get more and more for the soldiers to the point where 0 soldiers froze to death at Valley Forge. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't cold. I guarantee they were cold. Now, Nathaniel Greene also improved the food, the supply chain of the food. So here's your choice, man, the top or the bottom. Which set of rations would you choose? Would you want the beef or fish or the pork or bacon ones? Either way, you're getting about 1/4 of a pint of whiskey every day. There's always somebody who's thinking, so were there a lot of alcoholics during the Revolutionary War? Because it's a lot of alcohol every day. No, not necessarily. You have to remember, alcohol is good for a lot of things. If you're going to get cut or injured, you might pour some alcohol in it. In addition, I know there was fresh water at Valley Creek, but if you didn't have fresh water around and you were getting alcohol every day, you could take your canteen of water and put a little alcohol in it to purify it. Okay, they did know that it was good to, kill off whatever would cause dysentery. So, these soldiers' rations were really important for several reasons, but the food improved over time with the better supply chain. Now, one of the biggest things at Valley Forge that we think about is this guy on the right next to George Washington. His name is Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben, although he signed his letters de Steuben. But a lot of people you'll see label it as von Steuben. But anyway, Steuben was a 47-year-old Prussian that didn't even speak English, but it didn't matter because he was a military expert. George Washington recruited a ringer. He got this guy in there and he said, our soldiers are not professional soldiers. We need help. How many of you guys, SAR guys, have an ancestor that was a farmer and maybe joined the militia to help out, right? Or, a lot of people. Were our soldiers professional soldiers? They weren't. Were the British soldiers professional soldiers? They were. That made our group look like a ragtag, never gonna win it team, right? Well, Steuben came in and he knew all these tactics. He took 100 of the commander-in-chief's guards. He took Washington's life guards and he's like, all right, I'm going to train you guys. He had people translating for him. I'm going to train you guys for better military tactics, for all sorts of precision, how to load your guns faster, how to march better, how to really be professional soldiers. He even was so organized, he came up with a book called The Regulations for the Order and Discipline of the Troops of the United States. You can find this reproduction of this on Amazon if you're interested. But anyway, he was so organized that he came up with a way to make our citizen soldiers a real fighting machine. Now, some people go, wow, Valley Forge was the turnaround where we really got our act together. And that's why we won the Revolutionary War. Now, I'm not going to say that's the only reason. I'm going to claim Valley Forge is a really important reason. Yeah, the French joining us as allies is super important. There's lots of reasons. But why is it that Valley Forge had 0 battles, yet it's remembered? Think about it, guys. There must have been some stuff going on that we look back on and say, wow, they really got their act together. Now, we know it happened because not just about a week after they left Valley Forge was the Battle of Monmouth. And if you don't know your American history, I'm going to tell you, we won it. It was a decisive victory. Okay. I'm always embarrassed to say this, but everybody likes a good comeback story, right? So here it is. When I joined the DAR almost 20 years ago, I hated American history. Why? Well, my schooling was always memorize this, memorize that, and there was no emotion to it whatsoever. And besides, I'm an organic chemist. How many organic chemists do you know that love American history? All right. Okay. So here's what it is. I then started attending DAR meetings and hearing speakers, and I started looking at history differently, more from an emotional perspective. So let me ask you guys this. If our soldiers were losing a lot of battles and they were hungry and cold and had dysentery or, all this stuff, do you think at any point in time they were sitting back going, oh, man, I don't know. My cousin joined the British Army. I should have probably done that. They pay better. Oh, man, I don't know. Do you think any of these soldiers really had doubts at any point in time? I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I can't get inside their head, but I think it'd be natural. Now, what do you think their emotions were like after the Battle of Monmouth? After they spent 6 months getting better and better, and then they go and actually approves, like, yeah, we can do. I don't think they gave high fives back in the Revolutionary War, but I feel like these guys would have been like, yeah, and chest bumps and all that stuff. And so when I start to think of history as an emotional ride, I go, this is exciting stuff. All right, I'm going to fast forward, and sorry for the spoiler alert here, but 1781 Yorktown, we won it all. Okay, that's the end of the Revolutionary War. Now, that was a long Revolutionary War, and the encampment at Valley Forge was only 6 months, but we know it was a really important 6 months. I want to go over some myths and some facts about Valley Forge. No battles were fought at Valley Forge. A lot of people think there were, a lot, but now you know better. And no cannibalism at Valley Forge. There's some stupid website out there that talks about George Washington and the cannibalism at Valley Forge. I'm like, what? Don't believe everything you read on the internet. No one starved to death or froze to death at Valley Forge. And the last thing is the winter was not incredibly harsh. Now, I just looked at a website the other day that they were like, oh, one of the coldest winters out there was Valley Forge. Can we put it in perspective? I know you see all of these pictures of these cold soldiers at Valley Forge, but let me ask you guys this. And, in Texas, you guys right now, you're having a cold spell, but you're used to warm weather, right? Here, I'm in Pennsylvania. Am I used to cold during the winter? Yeah. So you hear these Northerners, we're like, oh, they're cold. They don't know how to handle it, right? Is cold kind of a perspective at times? It is. So if you were a soldier that didn't have shoes or pants, would you say it was an extremely cold winter? What if you were from South Carolina or Virginia? Would you say it's an extremely cold winter? Yeah, put those two things together, and you're going to get a lot of letters written home saying it's extremely cold. And so we have this thought of Valley Forge being the coldest winter. It wasn't. I think the encampment at Morristown was really bad. There's a scientist that was out there taking the temperature and the weather, every day and recording it in a journal. He was about 10 miles from Valley Forge, and it was not deemed an incredibly harsh winter for Pennsylvania standards. Okay. All right, some other facts about Valley Forge: Black and white soldiers and Native Americans all encamped together. If you're interested in researching this, the Rhode Island 1st and 2nd Regiments had about 750 patriots of color that served. More desertions at Valley Forge, about 1,000 desertions. They were super, super cold and tired. A lot of people went home and didn't come back. Now, some of them were labeled desertions because they didn't come back, but they actually died at home. We do know a couple of those, but certainly there were more there than any other point in time. And 2,000 soldiers died in there. But what makes me sad is that they're in unmarked graves. But you know, if you're 18 miles from the British and they can see you and you can see them, are you really going to want to broadcast how many deaths you've had during that encampment? You're not going to want to tell them. So everybody goes in unmarked graves. Makes me sad. How many of you guys like genealogy? Raise your hand if you like genealogy. Okay, a few guys here. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I would be a poor commander-in-chief of my DVF group if I didn't tell you how to check your SAR Patriot to see if he was at Valley Forge or she. All right, so the first thing I want to show you is this guy, John Felkins. He's not my Patriot. He's somebody's Patriot. But I know he was at Valley Forge. Why? Because it says a big old Valley Forge right there. You guys see in the yellow Valley Forge right there in the yellow oval. Okay, boom, you know your guys at Valley Forge. That's not always going to be the case, though. In fact, when these guys testified in court for their pension records, hardly any of them mentioned Valley Forge because to them, it was like the winter rest. You're going to mention your battles. You're not going to mention, oh, and I rested at Valley Forge, because Valley Forge didn't become significant until historians looked at it later and realized the importance of it. Okay, so it's hard to find documents that say Valley Forge. Okay, so maybe your pension record or your muster roll looks a little more like this. This guy is Noah Gillette. Anybody notice my middle name is Gillette? Yeah, this is my guy, Noah Gillette from Connecticut. So can you see in the middle here, it says State of Connecticut. Can you see it says Captain Jesse Kimball Company, Colonel John Chandler Regiment? But nowhere on here does it say Valley Forge. And I want you to notice the date though. All right, so if you're taking notes and you're like, I'm gonna look this all up afterwards, then I want you to write these dates down. December 19th, 77 through June 19th, 78. Those are the dates. If they are between those dates, then you're gonna think, maybe they were at Valley Forge. So how are you gonna know if they're at Valley Forge? We have a list of every captain that was at Valley Forge. So if your guy was at Valley Forge served during the time period of Valley Forge, December 1977 through June 1978, and served under a captain like this guy, Captain Jesse Kimball, I know Captain Jesse Kimball was at Valley Forge, so I'm going to assume this guy was at Valley Forge. Make sense? A little deductive reasoning? Okay. I want to show you a beautiful document that I found just because I find it so interesting. So can you guys listen to my words as you're trying to look at this document? Look on the right-hand side where my cursor is. You guys see my cursor moving around? Do you see pounds and shillings and pence? You see numbers. Doesn't this look like a spreadsheet? Well, it is a spreadsheet. My guy, Noah Gillette, got sick at Valley Forge and he wrote home and said, Dad, come get me. I'm being discharged. I'm sick. So his dad, Noah Gillette Sr., came to get him. And look at what this reads. Look at my cursor here. To Noah Gillette, the father, in time and expenses with sleigh and horses, bringing his son home. This is a spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet is keeping track of all the expenses that his father incurred to go get his son. Now, I want you to look in the upper left-hand corner with me. This is the document that reads, to the Honorable General Assembly of the State of Connecticut at Hartford. And then it goes on to say, the 8-month service in Captain Kimball Company, Colonel Chandler Regiment at Valley Forge. I found this document in Hartford. It's rare that you're going to find a document that has such great information about the encampment or the time at Valley Forge, but I just had to share this with you because it was such a neat document. All right, so you ready? I want you to write down the name of this website, and it is valleyforgemusterroll.org. valleyforgemusterroll.org. And let me take you to that website. valleyforgemusterroll.org. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. So I want you to look at your guy and I want you to look at his service. And I want you to first figure out, did he serve during the time period of Valley Forge? If he did, then I want you to look, if it says Valley Forge on his muster roll, you're done. But if it doesn't say Valley Forge, then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to say, who was his captain and what regiment was he in? So if you say to yourself, he was in the 3rd Pennsylvania Regiment under William Craig, then you're going to come over here and you're going to go regiments. And then you're going to go 3rd Pennsylvania Regiment. And you're going to cross your fingers that William Craig, Captain William Craig, is on this list. And then you go, oh my gosh, Captain William Craig is there. So then when you find that out, you think, my guy was at Valley Forge. That's what you're going to think. Now, there is also a searchable list, but I have to tell you, this list is not all-inclusive. My guy Noah Gillette is not on there. Makes me mad. Okay, but if you click search the muster roll, which is right here, this little search bar will come up. So my husband, when I looked for his guy, I was like, well, maybe he has an ancestor at Valley Forge. He's descended from George Klein. So I came up here and I typed in Klein, C-L-I-N-E. And I was like, oh, maybe George is on there. John, Matthias, Peter. No George. Oh, but then I thought, you know what? Klein could be spelled different ways. So I'm going to go Klein, K-L-E-I-N. George, look at that, George. And I do know that he was in the 3rd Pennsylvania Regiment. So this George Klein's probably my husband's George Klein. So now for DVF, we accept the muster roll as proof. You just have to prove that your guy was the same George Klein on here. That's it. Real nice. We also accept SAR applications as proof, as long as the information is checkmarked. If it's crossed out or as parentheses, we won't accept that proof because then that means it wasn't accepted by SAR. So if you want to join DVF, we'd love to have you. I'd be a terrible leader if I did not tell you how to join DVF. So here's my 30 seconds of go to valleyforgesociety.com, click on the membership link, and scroll down and find these 2 documents, the application and the checklist. And let's see, who is it? Who's on? Brent. Is it Brent? Did you just go through this process?
Yes, I did.
Would you say we were friendly and easy to work with?
Yes, very much so.
I'm putting the pressure on him, aren't I? But you probably worked with Sharon Withers. Did you work with Sharon Withers?
Yes, exactly, Sharon.
Very friendly. And she helped you and gave you all the information you need. And then the last thing we said was print out the top page, sign it, and mail a check, and you're done, right?
Yes, and I just did that a couple days ago.
Awesome. Well, I'll look forward to signing your application. So that's great. Anyway, guys, I really would love for you to do that. But to close out the presentation here, I did not mean to stop sharing. So let me share one more time here. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. Now I'm sharing you guys. Can you see you guys? Sorry about that. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so to close out the presentation, Valley Forge legacy lives on. I mean, you're going to find it in tons of this stuff all over the place. If you see this stuff on eBay, do not bid on it because I am bidding on it. Okay. But it lives on in the groups like my group, DVF, Valley Forge Society. We are constantly trying to spread the word about the encampment at Valley Forge to honor those veterans that were there during the encampment. The park is 1 5-square-mile testimony to the encampment at Valley Forge. Right? There's monuments everywhere at the park. Patriots of African descent. The DAR built a big bell tower at the park to commemorate the Valley Forge. Get on that SAR. Let's see you build something, right? Okay. Museum of the American Revolution has an entire exhibit dedicated to Valley Forge. So we come to the very close, the very last slide here, and I have to hope that you learned something, that you stayed awake, and that now when you look at a picture that someone portrayed anything about Valley Forge, you're a walking encyclopedia. You can look at that and be like, oh yeah, George Washington, you know, he was 45 years old. He had all that experience from the French and Indian War. And oh, this guy here, that was von Steuben. And Steuben, man, he didn't speak English, but he didn't have to because he had people translate and he was a military expert and he trained 100 guys to go and train everybody in the camp on how to be an expert soldier. And oh, see that fire there? Man, there was like 1 out of every 4 guys were poorly clothed and cold, but they got that supply chain working. And it wasn't even a really cold winter. We think it was, but it wasn't really that cold. Oh, and these huts, man, they built 2,000 of those in a matter of days. And 1 hut was designated as a hospital to help with the health concerns and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And you're a walking encyclopedia, aren't you now? All right. Now, do you see how crazy my seniors are in high school when I teach them at 8 o'clock in the morning? I teach them organic chemistry and I'm a morning person. So just think about that for a while because right now I'm ready to go to bed. So we've come to the end here. So Tom, I want to thank you for inviting me to come speak, but do we have time for me to ask if anyone has any questions?
Yes, of course.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Whatever. I'd love to hear from you.
Nice presentation.
Good. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I've got a comment to make. I'm Pete
Yeah.
McClellan,
Hi, Pete.
and I was a participant in the Children of the American Revolution in the Ruth R. Woodhull Society on Freeport, New York. And we took a tour of Valley Forge back in around 1952, 53.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering how much has changed in terms of the number of huts that you had over that period of time from when I visited until today. Have you added more or not?
Well, so first of all, you're asking me like I'm in charge of the park, and I'm not. So I can't really attest to all of that. But I can say that there have been a lot of changes because in 1976, the park became a national park. And you know as well as I do, with national funding, you can do a lot more than state funding. So
Right.
they really have made quite a few changes in the park, a lot of improvements. I have to laugh. They even have programs where somehow they got invasive crayfish in the Valley Creek there. And they have a program where people wade into the creek and fish out the invasive. You know, I say crayfish because I'm from the north. Are you guys snickering at me because I say crayfish? I just realized that crawfish. Okay, the crawfish that are in the creek there. I have a friend from Louisiana that laughs at me all the time. Anyway, like they even have programs like that. So the park really has changed in terms of those. But at the same time, they've really tried to maintain the buildings. They've tried to do a lot of upkeep. They are this, fingers crossed, spring opening a brand new visitor center to the park. The old one I thought was pretty good. The new one is going to be even better. So, Pete, I'm sure there are a lot of changes since then. I'm just not aware of what those changes are in particular.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay, good question. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I saw a program they were talking about the Valley Forge, and they showed a lot of the food was rotten or getting old and stuff. How I guess true to is the programming versus what you're saying accurate?
Yeah, you know what? Okay, there were some issues, especially in the beginning. Also, they had a little problem because they were only 18 miles from the British. So any of the farmers or suppliers that were in between Philadelphia and Valley Forge had to make a decision. Are you going to sell to the British? Are you going to sell to the Americans? Right? You have to make that choice. Some people were loyal to one side and therefore sold to that side. Others were like, well, who's going to give me the best price for it? Right? Okay, that's another thing. Or who's going to give me the coinage versus the paper currency? I mean, there were all sorts of reasons why one would be sold to the other. At times, they had better food. It ebbed and flowed, but by the end, they were much, much better because Nathaniel Greene is the quartermaster general. Really, that was part of it, figuring out how are we going to take care of all of us together and make it so these guys don't desert, make it so they're here. Maybe you've heard the story of the pepper pot stew. Have you heard about that, Clayton? Okay, so you'll have to look that up because at one point in time, George Washington did issue a better meal for all the guys. I think it was on Christmas, like with pepper pot stew. And Campbell's Soup used to sell that kind of soup, but I don't think they sell it anymore. But you'll have to look at that online. That's a good resource to look for. But I do know that there were some problems with the food supply in the beginning. Yeah, there were guys that were really malnourished. There was a lot of problems for malnourishment as well. So, yeah.
It
Okay.
doesn't look like a pleasant time to be walking around.
No, and you know what? Again, that goes back to that emotional, like, oh man, I'll bet you there were a lot of guys who were like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go home. Why? Let's just let the British take it. I can imagine. I just think of my ancestors, and I have a lot of patriots too that were at Valley Forge, and I think, wow, thank you for sticking it out, honest to goodness, because I think at times it might have been really doubtful for a lot of people. So, thank you, Clayton. Anybody
Susan?
else? Yeah.
Got a question.
Yeah.
As close as they were to the British and as long as they were there, how come there was no major encounters during that time, and what prompted them to break camp when they did?
Okay. I don't know why they prompted to break camp when they did, because I always thought about that. June 19th, that's pretty late to break camp, isn't it? right? June 19th. But I do know that it was kind of, time to rest during the winter, and you can't really fight when it's cold and wet out. And Tom, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, the reason they left Valley Forge at that time was it was a standoff during the Philadelphia campaign between the British in Philadelphia and where they were in Valley Forge. There were some skirmishes that went on in Chicken Reed, White Marsh, and a few other places. But as the British were starting to withdraw from Philadelphia, they were headed north. And as they headed north, that's when Washington said, "We're leaving our camp and we're going to follow them," because that's where they caught him at Monmouth.
Mm-hmm.
Good info.
Thank you, Tom, for adding that. I would love if my students at school would do that, like help each other out. And that's what we want. Conversations. That's what history is, conversations.
Okay.
Tom, are you okay with me throwing that link in there that we talked
Yes,
about?
go right ahead, and I'll preface it. I'm going to put out an email tomorrow that will basically say about the same thing with some additional information, what she's fixing to say.
So just if you, I don't normally ask for money for the presentation, but Tom said, hey, go ahead and throw that out there. I'm not saying like you have to or anything, but if you feel like you want to donate, we're having a project right now. We're trying to raise $10,000 to create a new exhibit in the Museum of the American Revolution, kind of around William B.T. Trago's painting of the March to Valley Forge and some of his other works. And so we're doing that right now. If you visit the website link that I threw in the chat, and Tom's going to graciously send that out to you guys, and you feel like donating, if you are a donor of $20 or more, you can do it in honor of or in memory of someone, and it'll go on our website permanently. So,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway.
All righty.
All right, Tom, I'm gonna leave you guys go. I might
Okay.
actually
Don't leave.
go get.
No, you read the agenda. Don't
Oh,
leave.
that's right. I got a certificate of appreciation. I'm so excited.
Right. Okay, let's see here. I've got to share my screen, and I want to do.
Tom and Susan, this was an outstanding program.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. Well, Tom had seen it already, and apparently they liked it before. So did you like it again, Tom and Tom? I don't know. I keep changing it a little bit every time.
Like I said, we're going to try and tee you up for the fall.
Okay, I'll speak anywhere.
Yep. So it was. I thought it was extremely good. Now, if I can just get back to where I need to be, I'm
laughing. If you want to fly me out to Texas, I'll come down and I'll give the presentation to the whole group.
All right. Okay. So can you see that?
Oh, that is so nice.
So we really appreciate you coming. Like I said, the two Toms here had heard you before, and maybe some of the other people that are here had heard you before. We are very impressed with your presentation style, the information you provided. I can understand why you are where you are in your society, that you're a member of there. And also it's very heartwarming to know some of the information about your history and the DAR with your family, that sort of thing. So just as sort of a token here of our appreciation, I wanted to give you this certificate. If you'll either email me or you can email Mark Carr and give us your mailing address, I will mail this to you.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
You can either decide to frame it and put it in a place of honor, or you can put it in the drawer of the file cabinet, whichever you prefer.
My husband is an SAR member, and my 18-year-old son is an SAR member.
Oh, good.
So.
Okay. It's good. So anyway, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and the wonderful presentation, and good luck on raising the money. And I have just wanted to let you know that I have a bucket list over here, and I've actually put on there, visit Valley Forge.
Good.
So it's on my bucket list now. So I'm going to get there. I actually have some of my ancestors that were in the Philadelphia area quite a bit, well, right around 1700 or before. So I'm going to come up there, and while I'm up there, I'm going to get to Valley Forge. So thank you so much.
And if you come up, Tom, you let me know. And if I can come over to Valley Forge and share the time with you, I'd be glad to go. So.
We'll do it. Thank you so much. And
all right.
Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now I have to figure out how to leave.
Oh, okay.
I got it.
Okay, I know. Okay.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so hope everyone enjoyed that. Like I said, the two Toms here tonight had heard her before. And what I heard this tonight, probably 70% of it was the same, but I think that probably 25-30% was some new stuff I hadn't seen before. So that was good too. So hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so we'll move along quickly here. I had some stumbles at the first, so I can at least get a few more extra minutes. Let's go forward with our business here, starting out with the old business here. We're still looking for volunteers and mentors to basically be squad leads. And if you have interest in that, please contact David Kinsey, who's heading that up. David Kinsey and John Greer are preparing a new members orientation meeting. And again, David's added that up. Contact him if you're interested. He's planning to do several of these meetings. And some of the new members and even some of you guys that are older members that maybe just like a refresher course on where to find things in the websites and all those things, that he's going to cover quite a bit of it. Anyway, be sure to contact David. Would you like to say anything else about that, David? Yo, David.
Yeah, I know. I was had on mute there. No, I've just got my schedule for March, so I'm hoping to throw a couple of dates out there, although we've already got a lot going on with March, with leadership meeting on the 6th, the special Congress on the 13th. It's just already snowballing for March, so. Okay.
But anyway, I think basically I'm probably going to sit in one because I still consider myself sort of a new member here. So anyway, thank you, David. Again, I had this last month, but David mentioned it. No, I don't think he mentioned this, but anyway, in April, we're going to have our state convention, and it will be a virtual meeting via Zoom. More details in the coming weeks on that. We will be having looking for delegates to attend that meeting. We get a certain number of delegates based on the size of our chapter. And so I've been to one of those. I recommend you doing it. And by doing it with Zoom, also, if you just want to come and see sort of what it's like and what goes on at that level, well, I would encourage you to attend it. Usually it goes through several days, but basically at the end of it, there's the general meeting, which is very worthwhile to attend. Again, then just point out, I sent out an email on this, but the National SAR, in conjunction with the George Washington Mount Vernon, has invited us to join in a virtual celebration of George Washington's birthday on Monday, February 22nd at 6 p.m. Central Time. They're going to show things about Mount Vernon, have some entertainers, et cetera, et cetera. If you've never been up there, it's a good time to sort of see it and see some things about that. Again, I think basically all you got to do is go donate $5 to the organization, and you can then go enjoy that. I'd highly encourage you to do that if you have the time. Carol and I are planning to, I've been there several times, but I think I'm gonna go to this too. So anyway, just if you have the time, please do it. And if you do go, please let me know so I can give you some credit for that. Okay. There's a couple of contests for elementary and then middle school students that are going on now, and they've got an extension on the time to which you can present basically it's either a poster or a brochure. The Americanism elementary school poster contest, it goes from 3rd grade to 6th grade, and the Sergeant Moses Adams brochure contest is from 6th to 9th grade. They're pretty flexible on that date, even though anyway, so if they're within those date ranges or the grade ranges, they can enter those. There are basically cash awards at both the state level and the national level, if you get that far. And so I'm looking for at least, this is sort of a stretch goal I've sort of set for the chapter for this year. So if you have a grandson or a granddaughter, makes no difference, or someone that's in that grade range and you'd like to maybe challenge them to make either enter the poster of the brochure contest. Please contact me for information, and I'll get you whatever you need, and we'll see what we can do. And anyway, and I need to get those entrance bills in by April 15th so that we can judge them, and we have to judge them, and we only get to send one to state. So please help me on that. So we can at least get one poster and one brochure if we can.
Tom?
Yes?
Is that date right of April 15th? Because I thought we would announce the state winners at the state convention on the.
So I was told by the man that's handling it, he said he needed them by May 15th.
Okay.
Bill Sickle sent out a note about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
May 15th, right, Tom? It was May 15th, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so I was trying to give us a month to judge if we need to, and then get it to him in time.
Okay.
Okay, so next meeting is going to be on March 18th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. I'm excited about this. I actually reached out because I've been to the Battle at Kings Mountain National Park and seen all of that. I was very impressed by it. So I just picked up the phone, or I think it started with an email, and we've actually got one of the National Park Rangers, Lamar Tate, is going to present to us, subject to getting another confirmation to him by Mark. But and so he's spoken to DAR groups in the area there, and so he's gonna talk to us about basically the battle itself a little bit, then also the development and the maturing of the park over the years and what's gone on there. So I'm excited about that. I hope you all are too. I think it's something a little bit different. And I had an ulterior motive because my Patriot was right there in the middle of all of that. So that's sort of why I went and did that. So anyway, please try to make it at the next meeting. Last Saturday, Jim Carter, Al Lisi, and myself attended the Arlington chapter February meeting and program, and they had basically a lady there presenting about our National Medal of Honor Museum that's going to be built in Arlington. I was very impressed by our presentation and the things that are going on. There's a lot of ways in which the local SAR chapters are going to be able to participate in that. Anyway, I want to let you know we had that. I went to that meeting. Just a couple of points there. They're going to do the groundbreaking later this year. And basically the opening schedule is for 2024. And hey, Mark, are you still on the line? Or still on the call?
Yes.
Okay. I'll send you the information. I'd like to see if we could get the lady that made the presentation to maybe make us a presentation, because I thought it's right here in our backyard. You can sort of see there where it's going to be out there by all the Arlington sports and entertainment venues. And it looks like it's going to be a really nice place. I think everybody enjoys seeing that. So I'll send you the information. Maybe you can get her in June or something like that, or if we have a dropout. She's here locally in the area. She's a DAR member and her husband's SAR. So in the Arlington chapter. So I'll get that to you. Okay. New business. Okay. Ralph, are you on? Ralph Thompson?
Yeah, I had to unmute. Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. You want to talk about give the treasurer's report, please?
Sure. The bank balance as of the last report in January was $2,598.19. We received 2 dual member dues checks totaling $40, which were deposited when received. The current balance in the bank account is $2,638.19. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept the treasurer's report as written?
So moved.
Who said that, please?
Kinsey.
Oh, okay, David Kinsey. Okay, thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, Al Lisi seconded. Okay. We have any discussion? Okay.
In US dollars, right?
What? Now, you know what might come back to that, remember? I thought we were going to change it to Bitcoins. Remember that?
Bitcoin.
You'll
Okay,
have to do treasurer.
He converted to Canadian dollars and took the difference.
Okay.
Please.
With that discussion, let's see, where am I? Yeah, okay. So all those in favor of the motion, I'm sorry, yeah, all those in favor of the motion indicate by a thumbs up or an aye. Okay, all those opposed signify by nay. Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved.
Is that like a horse? Yeah,
Hey, yeah, right. Is it really nay? I think it is. Okay. I have to ask my, okay. So, I'm sorry, I missed the oh my gosh, I missed the minutes. Sorry, Blas, my bad. So the minutes are published on the website. I'm sure everybody's gone out and looked at those. So is there any discussion relative to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor either indicate with thumbs up or saying yay. All those opposed, nay. Okay, hearing nothing. For the nays, the minutes have been approved as written and on the website. Sorry about getting that out of order, guys. I'm having a rough night tonight here. Okay, let's see, comments. I think from our Texas Society officer, I think, Tom, I may be wrong. I haven't looked in the last few minutes. I think you're the only Texas level officer here tonight. Do you have any comments for us?
Well, except for David Kinsey, who's the treasurer.
Yeah. We'll let him talk in a minute, I say.
Okay. No, I have nothing for the cause. I may have that position, Tom, but I'm actually joining this as a new member of your chapter.
Oh, exactly. You're right. And I hope you're getting all the invites, right? So.
Oh yeah, you guys are very good about that. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Well, we're glad to have you. Okay, David, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I want to know when Tom's going to come over with his scotch and work on my boat.
As soon as the lake thaws.
That's what I'm afraid of.
You never told me what type of scotch you like, man.
Oh, it's not me. I mean, Van Fossen, T2, he likes his
that
scotch guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, well, you could have got 2 bottles and I'd have never known you were getting 2.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, David Kinsey likes scotch that's free.
Oh, it's a rough crowd tonight.
And besides that, I'm not sure if you use spell check on your website there, but that's okay.
Oh, did I mess that up? Oh, well.
I don't know if officers are spelled right. Yeah.
It may not be.
Anyway, no, we're moving right
got some
on
extra letters in there, maybe. Yeah.
News collection. We're just about ready to reconcile with National. And once we're there, we're there. And like you said earlier about delegates for the state meeting, we get roughly 8. Nathan doesn't count because he was a former officer, president, and National. So
we get 8 plus Nathan, right? If Nathan chooses to come, which I'm sure he will.
Oh, he'll be there. I'm thinking we get 1 at large and then we get the 8. So we could have with Nathan would be 10.
Okay. So
you're right, David. You get 1 at large and 1 for each 7.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So it is a total of 10 then with Nathan.
With Nathan.
Okay. Well, I would like everybody to think about it. Again, I've been to those before. And so think about that. And before very long at all, I'm going to be asking for delegates that are willing to go to the meeting. Okay. Let's see. By the way, so Nathan, do you have any comments for us this evening?
I think he jumped ship.
Nathan? Okay. Yeah, he's not at his house right now because all the power outages. He's out Fairview maybe or somewhere anyway in an apartment or something. Okay, so he may have dropped off. Okay, so do we have, let's see, did I miss any other Texas Society officers? Okay, fine. So do we have any other business from the floor? Okay, hearing none. I'm sorry? Okay. Okay, hearing none, then Chaplain Babs, would you give us our benediction, please?
Yes. The God of all grace, who hath called us into his eternal glory by Jesus Christ, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you, and to him be the glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Don. Then let me do this right quick here. Okay. Compatriot Kinsey, would you do our recessional, please?
Sure, if you'll join me. Until we meet again, let us remember
Us remember our obligations to our forefathers,
Constitution,
our Constitution,
Bill of
Bill of
Rights,
Rights,
independence,
independence,
Supreme Court,
and
and
a
a nation of free men.
Okay, so thanks everyone for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you in March. I hope spread the word, because I think the program is going to be very good also in March. So thank you so much. Have a great
Thank
evening,
y'all.
guys.
Thank you.
Stay
Good
safe.
night.
All right.
Bye.